Compassion can do policies from Marianne. Welcome to our game show today, everybody.
I'm Vaishnavi, and I live in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
My name is Aaron Carson, and I live in Thailand, in Bangkok.
This is our Compassion Can category. What's going to happen is each player is going to get two policy choices. And of those two policy choices, you're just going to speak 1 or 2 minutes, pick one, and speak 1 or 2 minutes what you know about that policy, how you feel about that policy, or how you think that policy would better the lives of other people. So I'm going to give the can a shake, and we'll continue with Vaishnavi being our first player here. Kind of loud. Have all the policies written inside, and I'll pull out two. The first one is reparations, and then the second one is peace. Bum, 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 bum. Which will you choose? Which will you choose? Vaishnavi, which policy for thee?
Peace.
Peace. Let's
Yes.
hear what you have to say about Marianne's policies for peace.
Marianne represents the interconnectedness of all of us. And it's my belief that we need a shift in consciousness in order to effect a better world. And it's moving from a transactional model of I'll give you this if you give me that, to a more ecological model of peace, meaning that we do recognize the interconnectedness of all the countries, and also that we are just one world in this world of nations. We don't have to kind of bully our way to the top of the heap, and that it's a less hierarchical notion. So she's about changing the consciousness of people because it comes from the inside out. And we really need to make peace within ourselves. And that's as both individuals and as a country. And then we need to take that out into the world.
It simply is riddled with warmongers. There is a forever war machine. Washington, quite simply, is riddled with warmongers. There is a forever war machine. We know about the military-industrial complex. We know what Iraq was, the extraordinary failure of the last 20 years in Afghanistan. We also know that to the guys who made trillions of dollars on it, it was just a kind of hugely successful era. So we need a president who's not snookered and a president who is not easily manipulated. Having said that, the president is the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, and I deeply respect that. The U.S. military, I look at the U.S. military the way I look at a surgeon. If you have to have surgery, you won't need to have the best surgeon, and the United States does need to have the best surgeon, and the United States should have the best surgeon on hand. But a reasonable person tries to avoid surgery. Franklin Roosevelt's line was, we need to do more than end war. We need to end the beginnings of all wars. That's why I want a Department of Peace. Just like we have a military academy, we should have a peace academy. Just like we have an army of military personnel, we should have an army of peace builders. And there are 4 factors which statistically indicate that when they are present, there will be a lower incidence of of violence and a higher incidence of peace. Those factors are greater economic opportunities for women, greater educational opportunities for children, a reduction of violence against women, and a reduction of unnecessary human despair. So I want to imagine the world. We have about 12,000 nuclear bombs on the planet. About 7,000 of those are ours. I agree with JFK. If mankind doesn't get rid of war, war will get rid of mankind. I want to imagine a planet without war in 100 years. And I want to reverse engineer from there. Those guys play war games. They need to. We also need to play peace games. And people who say that that's naive, I think what's naive is to think we'll even still exist on this planet in another 100 years if we don't at least try. Washington, quite simply, is riddled with.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful policy that she has. And I think that it definitely makes her stand out in like the field of choices for people to vote for. And her policies on peace right now are so needed. I mean, everybody's calling for peace and for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
And I hope that they get to see that what they're calling for is actually represented in these policies of
Yes.
Marianne's.
And the one quick last thing is that Marianne recognizes that you cannot have peace without justice.
Right. And it is a very interconnected thing because in my mind, my whole support and conviction in supporting Marianne has to do with the planet, right?
Yeah.
And we can't address climate change unless we have world peace.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that it's just the way it is. So and we can't really address poverty unless we address peace as well.
That's right.
People are not going to feel at peace if they're still impoverished. So it's all interconnected.
Yes.
Lovely. Erin, I'm going to shake the compassion can for you. I wonder what policies will drop out of the can. Oh my goodness. The first two are children. And the other one is crime prevention. Which one will you choose? Which one will you choose? Will it be the one that is in today's news?
I'm going to go with children because it is kind of mind-blowing to me that after all these years of political grown-up conversations, very little of the public discourse is about children until it gets to an emergency phase where there's a school shooting or something really drastic happens. And then it's like, what are we doing about this crisis? But there has been really no concerted investment in the future of children. And I'm actually not entirely sure if the Department of Children and Youth means that it would be composed of children and youth, or if it would be made up of adults who address the issues of children and youth. But either way, I consider it to be extremely important. And one of the things that I went through myself as a child was that I left the Canadian school system because I couldn't get along with my peers, and I didn't do well with cliques, and I couldn't study in a competitive environment. I had a different sort of brain. I needed a lot of space to get concentrated. And as soon as I started doing homeschooling with my mother, I started studying avidly. And one of the things that I liked was the fact that Marianne Williamson emphasized the Montessori model of schooling, which instead of trying to imprints something on children's minds, it actually looks at what their talents are and tries to draw them out. And so it's kind of like approaching each child with an open mind and then seeing what strengths they have that can be encouraged. And which is very different from this mechanistic model of the education system that we have today, which tends to treat all children as clay that are going to be made into cogs in the machine. And which, you know, for me as a child was not inspiring, and I'm sure for many others as well. I recognize that some children do really, really well in a competitive environment. And I know that some of my friends floundered in alternative schools because they didn't have enough structure. But what would be amazing with a kind of redesigning of the education system would be that those things would be assessed by experts, and it would be prioritized to place children in education in facilities that would really facilitate their growth and their strengths to come out and flourish.
Yeah, I think that that is true. I know I've heard her in some of her speeches comment on the fact that our education system is still modeled after the education system that first arrived on this continent. And at that
And
time,
it's based
women
on
didn't
property
have any
taxes.
voice. Yeah, and it's based on property tax. So there's that inequity in the school system. So I imagine it will be so much better. I mean, just any movement towards a change in that system will just be so much better.
One of the reasons I want an entire Department of Children and Youth is because the crisis of American children goes even beyond education. And at this point, we know things about the brain, for instance, of early childhood. We know things we didn't know even 10 years ago, neuroplasticity and so forth. So I want to see a massive transfer of resources into the lives of children 10 years old and younger. I think the job of a president should be thinking not only about the people today, but what is this country going to be 20 years from now? The American child, I think, is the greatest collateral damage of vulture crony capitalism. Because children are not old enough to vote, so they don't form a constituency. They're not old enough to work, so they don't have any financial leverage. And their needs are just consistently disregarded. So when you say they feel disenchanted, how could they not feel disenchanted? When you see a younger generation of, let's say, even Gen Z, what has government truly ever done for them? Really, what has it ever done? Government should exist to, according to the Declaration of Independence, governments are instituted to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our government functions now in a way that does more to thwart the pursuit of happiness than to support the pursuit of happiness. When you run a country with a bottom line of short-term profit maximization for huge corporate entities, there is no interest in long-term planning, right? Government should have that if you're really concerned about the common good as well. The way to make this, to know that this country will thrive in 20 years is to take much better care of your 10-year-olds today.